if everybody knows who Cynthia is, she is a 6-term congresswoman from Georgia. She was a thorn in the side of not only the Republicans, but the Democrats. And I think they all equally disliked her because she was so damn honest. And she really attacked a lot of institutions that are promoting all these crazy ideas that are trying to pull us apart. So I'm going to bring Cynthia on. Cynthia, would you come up, dear?
Yeah.
I absolutely have to tell you, this is the neatest lady in the world. I love this lady. God bless you. All right, it's all yours.
Well, I hope he loves me when I'm finished. Okay, hello? And thank you. That's what we do in the South. And thank you all for being at this very important discussion. I'm extremely grateful to a real hero of the soil, G. Edward Griffin, who gave me the opportunity to share my ideas and values with you. I would like us to engage with each other for just a short while about the divide and rule strategy and how it is purposely deployed to keep certain people on top of the heap for power, money, and influence. In my opinion, it's true that more of us mean it when we say we want to take our country back. But what exactly does that require? And how can we begin to do it? Our opposition, the ones who control the U.S. now, have laid perfect traps, and many of us fall into them. But I have formulated my values paradigm, having been targeted by the media and fired from my job for speaking my truths as I see them. I was forced by my harsh treatment to retreat within myself and re-examine just exactly what my values are. I found them to rest on truth, justice, peace, and dignity. For they are all interrelated, and we cannot have any of the others without a solid foundation of truth.
Amen.
And the highest, thank you for that, and the highest relationship that I can have with each of you is the one that's grounded in mutual dignity. And clearly, if I don't respect Mother Earth, there is no me and there is no us. So upon my reflections on my own leadership, I decided that these values are what motivated me to take inconvenient stands in the past and what will direct my steps in the future. And thus I want you to walk with me and stare the U.S. deep state in the face, and then join with me and I with you in order to defeat them. It is true, we are engaged in a war with the deep state. So now, what is the deep state? Recently, we've learned about the concept of the deep state. It has become common parlance for most of us, especially since the presidency of Donald Trump. Because quite frankly, we're seeing the fruits of a long plan that has been worked almost with perfection to overtake control of the U.S. deep state, to replace your finger on the nuclear button with theirs, to strip the U.S., meaning you and me, of whatever wealth we've been able to accumulate. My former campaign manager would say all the time, make your plan, work your plan, and your plan will work for you. Well, a small group of people, the cabal, the globalists, the deep state, neocons, neoliberals, whatever you want to call them, they made a plan. And now their plan is working for them. And after getting bitten by them, I spent time studying them and this phenomenon of the U.S. deep state. I read almost all of the thousands of pages of the COINTELPRO papers, a program run out of J. Edgar Hoover's FBI that actively misdirected, discredited, neutralized leaders, especially black leaders in this country. And when the FBI wrote neutralize, they also meant to kill. And so I've studied the many assassinations of the 1960s because others that I looked up to found inconsistencies in the government's narrative of events. And so they dedicated their entire lives to the study of the murder of JFK in broad open daylight as an example of what a US president had better not do if he wanted to stay alive. The murder of Malcolm X, who knew that the US government wanted him dead, and who, as recounted by Jim DiEugenio, received a phone call before his speech at the Audubon Ballroom, saying that today is the day. And instead of running away or leaving the country, Malcolm X went to the ballroom, where members of the Nation of Islam, with cover from NYPD and of course the FBI, shot and killed Malcolm in front of his wife and his 3 little girls. And then it was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s turn, where military intelligence tracked Dr. King during the last month of his life in Operation Lantern Spike, putting in over 16,000 man-hours of surveillance on him before the conspiracy of US government officials, Memphis police officers, and the conspiracy of silence from the media all converged on that fateful day in April of 1968. And just a few short weeks later, Bobby Kennedy, who announced Dr. King's murder while he was campaigning for president, was himself shot down in a mind-controlled Palestinian was blamed. A jury in Memphis, Tennessee in 1999 found the US government guilty of conspiracy to murder Dr. King, thanks to the work of Dr. William Pepper. This series of events led some lifelong researchers to stop in their tracks and attempt to understand the sheer evil that had captivated our country. I am proud that Dr. Peter Dale Scott, who coined the term deep state and who has written several books on the phenomenon, served on my dissertation committee for my PhD, where I used the modern day equivalent of the COINTELPRO papers, WikiLeaks, to understand US foreign policy toward Venezuela and Hugo Chavez. G. Edward Griffin, in The Creature from Jekyll Island, wrote what was to become an early exposure of the operation of the US deep state while it was in transition. He chronicled the betrayal by some members of the US deep state who allied themselves with a new crew that found itself powerful enough to ultimately win total control of the United States. G. Edward Griffin stressed in great detail the secrecy and seclusion of that meeting of greed, collusion, and betrayal. In my opinion, our predicament today is directly tied to the ability of the participants in that meeting to create U.S. law so transformational it's almost unimaginable to contemplate what the U.S. could be without it. Recently, there's been a lot of talk about identity politics as a bane of unity in the U.S. and the inability of our politics to deliver on behalf of the population. Flint, Michigan still doesn't have drinking water, but the U.S. is spending $100 million to build a drone base in Africa. For what? Today, one readily observes the partisan divide, that Democrats and Republicans are almost at each other's throats. The same goes for so-called liberals versus conservatives and left versus right. On June 19th, Scientific American magazine published an article summarizing the results of several polls on how identity politics can explain the partisan divide in the U.S. today. The main finding was this: across all 6 issues, identifying as liberal or conservative was a stronger predictor of effective polarization than issue positions. Thus, the right tribe sees itself as the polar opposite of the left tribe, even when there is policy overlap where the two groups could actually cooperate and get something done on which both groups actually agree. A Scandinavian research study found similar results several years ago, with all one having to do to elicit negative opinions about a particular policy was to merely mention that the policy, was favored by the opposite party. In that study, people who supported the policy suddenly opposed it based on the one bit of information that it was supported by the opposite party. So this is truly a dysfunctional state of affairs. That is, if you happen to want to get something done to move our country forward. However, if you are part of the group that has already won complete control of the U.S. deep state, do you want things to change? No. Therefore, the partisan divide serves to benefit those who have seized control of the U.S. deep state and use it now to dispossess all of us inside the U.S. and outside as well. The U.S. earlier this month, according to Deutsche Bank, reported that the top 0.1% now own as much wealth as the bottom 90%. This, my friend, is Thomas Piketty's capitalism. This is neoliberalism. This is the logical end of an economy that was designed on Jekyll Island. This sad reality that we all are experiencing today is the intended result of an economy that was never designed to work for us. But at some point, some of us have got to declare that their time is over. We cannot allow them to continue to use us for their goals. The great anti-apartheid leader Steve Biko wrote that the greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And Nina Simone sang that wonderful song that I love so much, I Ain't Got No, I Got Life, where she laments all the things that she doesn't have, but then she becomes upbeat and she remembers all of the things that she does have, including a brain and life. And so I've come up using my brain and my life with an idea of power cells as a way for us to unite and take our country back. Our opposition is clever. They used whatever advantages they have collectively in order to trick and bamboozle the people. Scientific American concludes that one reason the U.S. is so polarized is that we don't even socialize across political divisions anymore. With that recognition in mind, I have devised a project that I call Power Cells that will allow us to come together, sit in the same room at the same table, with our identities and histories intact, and together find those issues on which we can work in agreement and on common solutions and goals. Power Cells is my idea to organize us into a viable political force that can overcome the divide and rule strategy of this new U.S. deep state. I say as a tagline for the Power Cells, defeat the deep state, transform ourselves, and transform our country for ethical governance. I propose to use the behavioral sciences that we know work because of the field of organizational development used by corporations to lead and manage sweeping change and transform ourselves and our country. A kind of political total quality management experiment for all 50 states. After all, because we've been rigged for years, we'll have to work hard at unrigging ourselves. And I believe Power Cells is the formula to do that. We get their propaganda and misdirection 24/7, 365. Yet when our independent voices begin to penetrate the lies with the truth, they get blocked or booted from Facebook and YouTube and shadow banned on Twitter. But with each and every engagement, we learn more and more about our opposition. And the most important thing to know is that they spend so much time propagandizing us because they're afraid of us. And honestly, and I believe this very deeply, that they are most afraid of you, red pillars. You are at this Red Pill Expo because you know something is wrong. You came here to find answers. Fox News tells us the problem is left versus the right. CNN tells us that it's Republicans versus Democrats. Both of them are serving us division on a silver platter. And like the late great Black Panther Party leader Fred Hampton, murdered as a part of COINTELPRO by Chicago police, said, "I'm tired of answers that don't answer, explanations that don't explain, and conclusions that don't conclude." I bet there's more wisdom in this one room than in just about all of the rooms in Washington, D.C. The corridors of power are well stocked with people who have already been bought by a system that is rotten to the core.
Yeah.
The system is rigged, and I say drain the swamp. And let me conclude with this note on what has become known as identity politics. My identity is not a problem. Our problem is that person, that group, that cabal who would weaponize our identities against us. And it's impossible for us to take our country back if we remain divided.
Yeah.
Thus, I have renamed my presentation, "My Identity is Not the Problem, Understanding Divide and Rule Political Practice in the U.S." So, I say let us keep our eyes on the prize and not turn on each other as the deep state operatives would have us to do, but instead turn to each other on new and unrigged terms, where we each see our humanity and our readiness to forge a new and better United States with policies and goals arrived at because we dared to talk to each other. There is another vision for our country, and a vastly better future is possible. I'm ready to go there with you. I hope we can walk and create and cry and laugh and build and work together. Thank you.
I have to say, the more I know about Cynthia, the more I respect, and really, this is an extremely good, she's a national asset, she really is. I just remember some of the things when when 9/11, when the 9/11 Commission and her Rumsfeld about 9/11, and $1 trillion that disappeared.
Got me in trouble for maybe lose my job.
I like that. Our next panelist is Betty Wills, and Betty Wills is a stand-up poet. He's actually a comedian, but he's got 2 degrees in performing arts.